It started with laughter, not the warm kind that fills the air with joy. This laughter was sharp, cruel, and aimed like knives. In the back row of Westbrook High's science class, Emily Parker sat small and quiet, her fingers nervously fiddling with the edge of her notebook. She had always been the quiet one, the type who kept her head down and her thoughts to herself. But today was different. She could feel their eyes on her, the group of bullies who had made her life miserable for months. The ringleader, Madison Cole, was the kind of girl who wore confidence like a crown and cruelty like perfume. Her friends, Jake and Zoe, sat on either side, grinning as they whispered to each other. Emily knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. When the teacher stepped out to take a phone call, Madison's voice cut through the room. "Hey, Emily," she said sweetly, which was always a bad sign. "We're doing a little game for the class. You're going to be the pet. Crawl on the floor like a puppy." The class went silent for a split second, and then the snickers began. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the heat in her cheeks, the urge to disappear, to melt into the floor. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. But Madison leaned forward, her tone turning sharp. "Do it, or we'll make sure that video from last week gets shared with everyone." Emily froze. She knew exactly what they meant. The hallway incident when she tripped and dropped her lunch, face first, into a tray of spaghetti. Someone had filmed it. The thought of the whole school laughing again was too much. Her palms were sweating. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every eye in the classroom was watching. She thought about running. She thought about crying. But then something inside her shifted. Emily stood up. She didn't look scared anymore. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Okay," she said calmly. "I'll be your pet." The bullies smirked in victory, not realizing the trap had already been set. Emily walked to the front of the room and slowly got down on her hands and knees. But instead of crawling like they expected, she raised her head, looked directly at Madison, and in a voice loud enough for the whole class to hear, said, "But if I'm your pet, that means you're my owner, and everything I do will be exactly what you trained me to do." The class chuckled in confusion, but Emily kept going. She barked once, then turned toward Jake. "Fetch my homework for me." The room burst into laughter when Jake actually flinched and looked at Madison for guidance. She crawled to Zoe's desk and sniffed dramatically. "Oh, smells like someone's lying about their grades." Gasps filled the air. Zoe's face went red, because everyone knew she had bragged about getting an A, but the teacher had returned her paper with a big red C on top last week. Emily moved with precision. Her pet act more like a performance. She barked when someone whispered, purred when someone smiled at her, and dropped little truths she had quietly observed about people all year. Truths the bullies never thought she noticed. The room wasn't laughing at her anymore. They were laughing with her. Madison's smirk began to fade. "All right, joke's over," she snapped, but Emily stood up, dusting off her knees. "No," Emily said, her voice steady and loud. "The joke is that you thought I'd be humiliated. But you've been embarrassing yourselves all year, and you didn't even need my help. I was just the mirror." The class erupted in cheers. Even kids who had never spoken to Emily before clapped and whistled. Madison's cheeks burned crimson. Jake shifted awkwardly in his seat, and Zoe stared at her desk. For the first time, the bullies had nothing to say. That day marked a change. Emily wasn't suddenly the most popular girl in school, but she was no longer invisible. People stopped looking at her as an easy target. She had turned the game around, not with fists or shouting, but with sharp wit and quiet strength. Weeks later, a younger student who had been picked on came up to her and whispered, "I saw what you did that day. You didn't let them win." Emily just smiled. "Sometimes," she said, "you don't have to fight like them to beat them. You just have to show them they were never in control." And that became her quiet victory, the knowledge that her silence had never been weakness. It had been preparation. And when the time came, she spoke in a way that couldn't be ignored. Because sometimes the shyest people aren't the weakest. They're just waiting for the perfect moment to let the trap spring shut. Emily Parker had always been a shadow in the halls of Westbrook High. Not because she was invisible, people noticed her, but because she moved quietly, spoke softly, and never invited attention. She preferred books over conversations, sketching in the back of her notebooks over gossiping in the cafeteria. But shadows attract predators, And in Westbrook High, predators had perfect hair, expensive sneakers, and laughs that cut deeper than knives. Madison Cole was one of them, flanked by her two constant companions, Jake the smirking football player and Zoe, the queen of whispered rumors. Madison ruled her little kingdom of cruelty. The day everything changed began like any other. Emily sat at her desk in science class, carefully copying the diagram on the board into her notebook. The teacher, Mr. Howard, had just stepped out to take a phone call. The moment the door clicked shut, Madison's voice rang out like a bell meant to summon trouble. "Emily," she said sweetly, leaning back in her chair. "We're doing something fun. You're going to be our class pet for the rest of the period." Emily froze. "What? You heard me?" Madison smirked. "Crawl around on all fours, bark for us, do some tricks. If you're good, maybe we'll give you a treat." The room filled with muffled laughter. Emily's stomach twisted. "None to." Jakey's voice came next, deeper, taunting. "Oh, come on, don't be boring." Zoe leaned in with a fake sympathetic smile. "We'll make it worth your while, or we could just post that cute little video of you falling in the cafeteria last week." Emily's cheeks burned. She remembered the spaghetti, the gasps, the laughter that followed her for days. Someone had filmed it, and she now knew who had the file. She glanced around the room. Every face was watching. Some looked curious, some uncomfortable, but no one moved to stop it. For a moment, she thought about sinking into herself like she always did, letting it pass, waiting for the day to end. But something in her shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the realization that they'd never stop unless she made them. Emily stood slowly, calmly. "All right," she said. "I'll be your pet." The bullies grinned. "Good girl," Madison cooed. Emily knelt down, her hands on the floor. The room fell into an eager hush. Then she lifted her chin, locked eyes with Madison, and smiled, just enough to make the other girl hesitate. "If I'm your pet," Emily said clearly, "then you're my owner. That means everything I do is something you taught me. So I guess this is your training on display." Madison's smirk faltered, but she forced a laugh. "Yeah, sure, whatever. Start crawling." Emily did. But she didn't crawl aimlessly. She stopped by Jake's desk, sniffed the air dramatically, and said, "Oh, smells like someone failed the last quiz." The class roared. Jake's ears turned red. "Shut up," he muttered. Emily padded over to Zoe's desk, tilted her head, and said, "You're nervous. Is it because you told everyone you got an A, but it was really a C menace?" Gasps, laughter. Zoe's hand shot up to cover her paper, even though there was nothing on it. Madison's jaw tightened. "Stop making stuff up." Emily turned to the class. "Pets don't make things up. They just notice what's already there. I've been in this classroom all year. I see things. I hear things. Want me to share more tricks?" The cheers grew louder. Someone shouted, "Yeah, tell us more!" Emily's act was working. She had turned humiliation into theater. Every trick she performed was a carefully aimed truth. She remembered how Madison once cried in the bathroom over a text from her boyfriend, how Jake cheated off a freshman during a test, how Zoe spread a rumor that backfired and made her hide for a week. By the time Emily stood up and dusted herself off, the bullies were silent. The power they held had cracked. She faced Madison and said, "The thing about pets is, they're loyal. They protect their own. You don't deserve an owner like me." Then she walked back to her desk without another word. When Mr. Howard returned, the class was still buzzing, though no one told him exactly what had happened. But the story spread. By the end of the week, people greeted Emily in the halls with smiles instead of snickers. She wasn't suddenly the center of attention, but she had something better: respect. And the bullies. They learned that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous when pushed too far. Months later, a freshman girl who had been picked on approached Emily in the library. "I saw what you did that day," she whispered. "You weren't scared." Emily smiled. "I was scared. But I decided that fear doesn't get to decide how my story ends.